Thank you for joining us tonight and welcome to our Navigating Career Transitions panel event. This panel event is brought to you by the Alumni Career Services, which is a collaboration between the Alumni Association and the Student Success Center. My name is Jillian Perkins Marsh and I work as the Alumni Career Counselor, working with MAC grads from all degree programs up to 10 years from graduation. A few things before we begin, housekeeping items. We're very excited to welcome 3 of our alumni today. And so just to keep everyone ensuring that we can hear well, please make sure you're on mute during the discussion. We'll be focusing the first 45 minutes on our discussion and leaving time at the end for questions. But if you think of any questions that you'd really like to ask our panelists throughout the talk, please feel free to include those in the Q&A session, and I'll try to integrate them into the conversation as it fits. Otherwise, we'll leave them for the end. So on that note, I am pleased to welcome our 3 alumni, starting with Natalie Chan. Welcome, Natalie. Next, we have Felicia Chung. Welcome, Felicia. And last but not least, Marc Verbensky. Welcome, Marc. All right, so we all know, sort of in my role as a career counselor, I do meet a lot of individuals who are trying to, either at the initial stage of making their career decisions, and also folks that are in the midst of trying to navigate a career change. So really welcome you tonight, and thank you very much for sharing your career transition stories. Let's get started. Natalie, if you wouldn't mind kind of leading the way and telling us a little bit about yourself and your background.
Yes, hi everyone, my name is Natalie. So during my time at McMaster, I studied kinesiology, but I'm currently the business matching assistant at the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, which I will henceforth abbreviate as TDC. So TDC is a semi-government organization that facilitates and encourages trade with Asia through Hong Kong, and this primarily happens through organizing trade shows for buyers from around the world to participate in and source their products. And I'm mainly in charge of buyer recruitment and communications and maintaining and growing our Canadian database of companies. And prior to this, I worked as an office manager of a physiotherapy and chiropractic clinic.
Interesting, thank you. So physio into trade, or kinesiology into trade. Thank you. All right, and how about yourself, Felicia?
Hi, everyone. I studied life sciences at McMaster and moved into PR, into the PR world. I worked predominantly with beauty brands such as Sephora, Dior, Caudalie, and then I just recently transitioned to my role as a marketing manager. So another switch here to marketing, and currently at Amazon.
Thank you so much. And how about yourself, Marc?
Oh, thanks, Jillian. Like Natalie, I graduated from McMaster Kinesiology in 2016. From Mac, I went off to physio school at U of T, which I completed in 2018. Now, I worked clinically as a physiotherapist for just over 2 years. I really enjoyed my time working as a physio, but I knew pretty quickly that something was missing for me and I wanted to kind of explore other opportunities for growth. Now, in November of 2020, I was able to transition into my current role, which is surgical device sales with Johnson & Johnson. Now, what that means is companies like J&J will develop a product or an implant that's used in a surgery. So an easy example of that is plates and screws that go into a broken bone. So my job is essentially a mix of business and clinical side. Now, the business side is sales. So I don't really mean like door-to-door knocking or asking if someone wants to buy something, but in essence, I work with the surgeons and hospitals to educate them on our newest equipment and to see if and how our products can help during surgery. Now, the clinical side is once the surgeons and the hospitals request this equipment and implant, I'm there in the operating room with them to ensure that the use of the instruments go well.
So interesting. Thank you. One thing I noted as I was reading and learning more about you prior to this panel is interesting that each of you at one point kind of had decided to pursue a professional health career. And I'm curious, before we sort of go into the realm of career transition, I'm wondering if you might be willing to kind of share how you initially decided like your first direction.
I can start off. So starting off into kin, in high school, just kind of had this mindset that yes, I'm just going to pursue sciences. That is the path for me. But if you think back to high school, it's actually pretty hard to use those courses to really dictate what the next 4 years would be like. So how my kin journey started was I had a good friend from high school who went to McMaster. He went to kin. He's like, you should go to kin. And then so I just read up on it. Sounds interesting enough. And then I was like, well, I guess I'm going to kin. And then so I applied for it, got into it. So that's kind of what started my 4 years at Mac.
Interesting story. I think a lot of us can relate to that external influences. How about yourself, Felicia?
Yeah, I went into, similar to Natalie, I went into university thinking I'd be a dentist. And so went into life sciences. In my second year, I had job shadowed a dentist, and I knew it wasn't for me when I was watching the time on the scheduling calendar go by. Like every 10 minutes, I was watching that block move down until 5 p.m. when I could leave. And in that moment, I thought like, oh my goodness, I have to start from the beginning again. Like, I've spent 2 years of my university career in sciences. How do there's just no way that I can start from the beginning, which there is a way, but that was when I had that aha moment. Later into my third year, I was watching a lot of beauty videos on YouTube. Lisa Eldridge was the first Instagram influencer / makeup artist who talked about the science behind skincare and beauty. And that's how I felt I could bridge that gap of both my skill set, my knowledge, and my interests.
Interesting. Thank you. What about yourself, Marc?
Great. So I would say in undergrad, I just kind of followed the path of saying, well, you go to kin, and then after that, it's natural go into physio school. But truthfully, while I was in physio school, I kind of had thoughts that maybe I wanted to do something else or something additional. But I figured once I started practicing that these thoughts would go away. Now, as I started working as a physio, these feelings really only increased. And about 6 months in, I knew that I was going to pursue some type of different direction that isn't just clinical, but I really had no idea what that was or what else to do. And at this point, it's very unsettling. You know, you're not happy, but you don't know what else to do about it. So that's when you just kind of start exploring other options.
Mm-hmm.
Did you want to expand on the direction of options, or?
Yeah, that would be great. So you kind of read my mind. So yeah, so how did you kind of explore, like once you realized that this wasn't something that you could see yourself in longer term, how did you explore what direction to go into?
Sure, sorry, I'll kind of continue on this. One thing I did was I came to you guys and asked for help right away. I reached out to Jillian and the people at Alumni Career Counseling to kind of begin working through the process. One strategy I found very, very helpful is you have all of these ideas in your mind about what's a possibility, but nothing is concrete. So I remember making a big brainstorming sheet on a piece of paper. And I said, okay, well, here's where I am now working at a clinic, and here's all different options that I could possibly even think about. And I wrote down everything I know about that. An example was, well, do I want to open a clinic, and would I partner with someone or do it solo, and how many clinics, and would I affiliate with a doctor or a gym? Or another one would be, do I go into law or business, and what would that look like? And kind of connected all the dots. From there, I was really able to see, okay, well, I'm not interested in this, or I might be interested in that. And at that point, you begin the process of doing research and a deeper dive by reading about it yourself or by talking to people in that industry.
Mhm. Yeah. And what did you find sort of was the most helpful kind of element of that really helped you decide to kind of move into the medical device arena where you are now?
Good question. I found one fellow online that was, he actually made the transition from nursing into medical devices. And I really just messaged him and I said, what's it like? And he gave me an expectation of kind of day to day. And it was really that guy originally that I said, okay, I can see myself doing that. And after about a week of talking to him and looking into it more, I just said, okay, I'd like to really start pursuing this seriously.
Thank you for sharing that. That's so helpful to know, because we often hear folks, giving that advice of connect with people who are doing that work to hear about what it's like. But it's really always nice to hear how really truly helpful it can be in helping you make a good career decision. That's awesome. And maybe we'll circle back to Felicia, and we'll go backwards through our panel now. So
Sounds good.
yeah, so Felicia, you mentioned like you were looking at the clock and you were just counting down, waiting for the days to end, which kind of told you that dentistry wasn't the path that you were going to be moving into. So I'm curious, like, how did you go about exploring what else was out there and making a pivot from there?
So I was very fortunate that at the time at McMaster, there was a club called Style at Mac. And Kareem, I see you on here, hi. And that, when I led that club in my final year, looking back, it was like a PR agency, like a boutique agency. The way that we worked, the focuses that we had a fashion show at the end of the year, and there were 400 guests who came. We wrote about the different brands or designers or boutiques in Hamilton and gave them a lot of coverage and visibility. So in a way, I was working like a PR agency, but I just didn't know it at the time. Mm-hmm. So when I graduated, I figured, when I was looking at all the different avenues of marketing, I figured this might have been the most natural progression for me. But look at my resume, it screamed life sciences. So I didn't go back to school. I actually created a portfolio in the form of a magazine, because in PR back then, a lot of our results were driven by magazines, newspapers, TV. So I wrote a piece about the science behind acne to show that my science background is valuable for the beauty PR industry. I put together all the content, like all the photography work that we did together for Style at Mac, and I put it in the magazine, and then I wrote a piece as my cover letter, but it was more of like a letter from the editor, if you are familiar with the magazine format, to explain why I was leaving, well, not leaving, but my transition from science to PR. So I had it designed like a magazine, printed it, bound it like a magazine, and at the time I only had money for 10. So I went on Google and I looked up all the top agencies in Toronto and the clients that they had. And I went and hand delivered them. I kept 2 because 1, I wanted one for keepsake, and 2, when you go to the interview, it's nice to have a hard copy just to remind them that that was me. And it was interesting because when you're going into these agencies, you get to see the environment to see if it works for your like your comfort level, and you also get some face time. And immediately when I left, I got calls, like even if they weren't hiring, they were interested in speaking with me because it was such an interesting application. And that's when I landed my first job with National Public Relations. And that was my first agency job, where I worked for Amazon and Sephora, Keurig, Kohler, all those like bigger lifestyle, fashion, tech brands.
Interesting. So it was a matter of kind of really, it sounds like, looking deeply at the experience you had in the student club, and then recognizing, wow, this is actually PR, and then made that transition.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
That is so interesting. And I'm going to ask you more about that magazine later. So now you got that idea as well.
No problem.
All right. So how about yourself, Natalie? So how did you feel like, where was the time where you kind of decided like, yeah, I'm not going to head this direction, I'm going to make the change? And how did you do that?
Yeah, so it all kind of started when, which you probably saw in my story, is when I got the acceptance to, so this was CMCC, which is a chiropractic college in Toronto. So when that came in, I was thinking, okay, like now it's an option. There are definitely a lot of people vying for me to go down that route. They're just like, why would you not want to go down that route? So you become a doctor, and it's like it's just like there were a lot of things that like especially from like adults too, and even my surrounding friends like who were also like Marc going into physio or they're going to med school. So it just felt like, yes, I came from kin, so I should be aspiring for this path that makes sense for me. But then when I looked back on the courses that I enjoyed the most or where my strengths were, I was like, majority of them were actually not my kin courses, but rather my electives and things that I pursued as like my extracurriculars on the side. So that was a pretty big tell from the beginning. So took a lot of thinking, and then I knew that chiro was not for me. Given the time it would be, and also I guess tuition was not the main factor, but that was a pretty big factor as well. It comes out, it's quite hefty, but if I had the passion and heart for it, I would have 100% gone through with it. But that wasn't the case. So when that came, I knew that I just needed to, I'll find a job now. And I had experience working at a healthcare clinic before. And so I was able to start as the office manager for this kind of budding clinic. Grew a lot with them, gave a lot with them, gave a lot to them as well, and kind of helped them see them develop their online presence and also their outreach programs, things like that. One of the pushes that kind of had me change from where I am now was realizing that I was going in doing the same thing every day, and I had kind of reached a cap to how I could grow. And I tried to like make new opportunities for me at the workplace, but I had I think challenged myself in every way that I could there, and I knew it was time to change. And I also had a boss that kind of overstepped work-life boundaries, whereas it's a constant messages about work when they weren't necessary, could be saved to the next day. So that was kind of pushed there. And then an opportunity came up at my current company, and I went in and I did kind of like a practical aspect of the interview, did an actual like verbal interview, and it was a change because all of my colleagues are from Hong Kong, so everything was conducted in Cantonese, and so it was a change, but I just knew that I had an interest in marketing and that sort of field because it was brand new to me, and I like talking with people, so I knew that was going to be part of the job, being able to speak with buyers and I just maintain communications with them. So it was a very timely opportunity, so I was very thankful for that. So that's kind of how I made that transition from the clinic to this job.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So oftentimes, like folks who want to make career transition always have the question of like, they know where they are now. They know it's not really where they want to be. They want to go somewhere different, but really question, do they have the skill set kind of needed to get to that next stage? So I'm curious, going from the health office into marketing, how did you navigate that? Like, how did you communicate those skills?
Yeah, so one of my strong suits is definitely administrative work in terms of getting things organized. So that's one of like the main aspects of my job. So that's kind of what I did at the practical aspect, the practical part of the interview. That was more of the administrative work, and the rest of it just kind of came a long time with the experience. The main thing was just to be a super absorbent sponge. I want to enter in there and just like, if you had any questions, need any clarification, just make sure to voice it, because they know your background, they know your experiences, so they kind of have an idea what you may or may not be familiar with. So just ask questions where they were needed and just sought guidance.
I imagine that's pretty reassuring for a lot of folks to hear that that's possible to make that transition without having to go back and do formal schooling or a lot of training. Thank you for sharing that. And Felicia, back to your magazine, which is so creative, an interesting way to garner attention. I'm curious, that certainly seemed to make like a really big impression on the firms that you hand delivered them to. Curious, how did you come up with that idea?
So I don't know if anyone on here is familiar with Man Repeller. This was before it was this big website, like fashion website. It was like a blogger, like OG blogger. Her name was Leander Medine. And I was looking at how interns or prospective interns were applying, and someone applied in the form of a cereal box. They put like their skill sets in the nutritional label. They like designed the whole thing, and it worked so well because Man Repeller, as in the name, is a very quirky outlet. And so I had that idea of like knowing your audience. So I actually applied this to a few of my other job applications, not so much with Amazon, but for example, I applied to Pinterest. I didn't get the job, which is always okay. But I applied it with a Pinterest board. So I had created a whole Pinterest board, and in my cover letter, it was formatted like as if you were to click onto a photo in Pinterest, what it would look like on like that. I have no Adobe Illustrator, anything, any of those skills. PowerPoint was my best friend. So you can clunk your way through, but I always say, like, if you were approaching applying for any industry, even if you don't think you fully fit the role, know the audience, and you can be a little bit creative, especially if you feel like maybe your resume is not very competitive compared to the other applicants. That goes to a certain extent. I feel like going into tech is a very different ball game now entering tech, but for sure creativity goes a long way.
Yeah, that's so interesting. And do you see, like, I guess now in your experience, do you see other people coming into the field kind of doing similar things to sort of stand out, or do you recommend like a different approach now for folks that want to get into that area?
Not for the ones that I've been an interviewer for, but I like when I do a lot of like mentorship calls, and someone had wanted to apply to TikTok, and I said, do a TikTok, like apply with a TikTok video. So, and they were very open-minded to it. And actually this does happen. And I saw on TikTok also someone had wanted to apply to Disney, and instead she drew, maybe someone's seen this, but she drew her animation on the way to the Disney office, like on the ground. It was like a chalk art, and every day she was very persistent. Every day she would draw a new animation. So go bold, like make a statement, be creative, and brand yourself from the very beginning, because as you evolve, even if you're a junior, the team will recognize you as the one who drew animations on the chalk and has that creative ability, or wrote a piece about skincare, the science behind acne, and can talk to press about the science and the ingredients behind the product. So yeah, start away with being creative, but making sure that you can scale that to your later down in your career.
Interesting. Yeah, it's almost, as you were talking, I couldn't help but think like it's like proving your skills through that process. Like you're writing about acne from the science side, and you're that person was demonstrating their creative skills and so on.
Exactly.
So that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. That's excellent. Marc, I was curious. So with your movement from physio to your current role, how did you feel? Like, how did you kind of navigate that transferability of skills from the practitioner into industry?
Okay, that's a good question. So in terms of navigating transferable skills, really what I did was I looked at job descriptions, and I would see, okay, well, this one looks interesting to me. And then what they posted about the job, I would kind of work backwards and say, well, I kind of fit into this bill by, as a physio, you try to market yourself to the community, or you try to essentially, I hate to say it, but like sell yourself to the patient to prove that you're competent and you know what you're doing. So I said, okay, well, look, I'm fulfilling these roles, and these skills by doing what I'm doing right now, just in a way that you didn't think about. So I was able to kind of use the transferable skills and reframe my resume. But then how I actually got into it was when I found out this industry was what I wanted, was just really heavily networking on LinkedIn. I remember messaging people on LinkedIn saying, "Hi, my name's Marc. I see you're in position X at this company and you guys are hiring for position Y. Would you be open for a 2-minute phone call just so I can hear about your role?" And many people don't respond, but you'd be surprised how many people are willing to help out and have a quick chat with a stranger. So essentially what happened was I saw a job posting for Johnson & Johnson for the brain division. And I said, okay, well, this is exactly what I want. This works out. It looks really cool. So I applied and I ended up messaging the national sales manager for the brain division on LinkedIn and just said, "I applied, can I ask you some questions?" Implying I wanted a phone call. And he was like, "Yeah, sure, let's meet for coffee." I thought, okay, that's great. But I reached out to a family friend, kind of freaking out, saying, "Well, I have this coming up. I'm looking at it like it's an interview." And she said, "Well, one of my old colleagues works for Johnson & Johnson, but in the orthopedics, like the bones and the muscles, which is really what I wanted." She said, "Why don't you have a phone call with him and see what he thinks about the company, and that will help you prepare for the brain meeting." So I had a phone call. He said, "Yeah, my boss is hiring too. Flip me your resume and my boss will call you." Right. So it's like essentially just by reaching out to one guy, I was able to get 2 meetings or kind of 2 sit downs. And it was the muscles and bones guy, the orthopedics, that ended up reaching out and giving me an offer. So that's what I took.
Wow. All those pieces fell into perfect place, didn't they?
Sure. And you don't really have an opportunity in front of you until you kind of make it and take that first step, and then they all kind of start coming together.
Yeah, it's very well put. It's like that action, and also like putting yourself out there with a little bit of risk taking and trying to connect with people that you don't know, and being persistent. Like when you don't hear back from folks, just keep at it and seeing where that leads you. Yeah, that's really interesting. So in thinking back, and this is a question for all 3 of you. So thinking back to those times when you were really a bit more like stressed out about what to do next, because you realized that your first path wasn't really the right one for you. What's one piece of advice that you would give yourself, putting yourself back in those shoes?
Yeah, I can go for this. When I was thinking about this, the thing was, I think that just the message was just don't limit yourself. You can try to think that you have to stay within this box that you're familiar with, but just do whatever it is to try something new. Like when I just listened to Felicia and Marc, just try to learn more about yourself and just see what you value, how you want to grow. And times have changed. Times and opportunities have changed. So just trust your heart, trust your gut, and you're more capable than you think.
It's great advice.
Yeah, I agree. I received this advice from my mentor in my first job, and she's still a mentor to me, but she had said something that really resonated with me and I carry with me everywhere I go is, if something in your role doesn't fulfill you, if your entire role doesn't fulfill you, create space for something that does. So let's say you are in retail and you're very interested in the music industry, put your hand up to create the playlist. I was interested in content creation and social media and the marketing behind that. So when I was and then in hindsight thinking back, I did this, but when I was working in retail before I applied and did my whole magazine application, I was in retail and I had put my hand up and we created a bunch of content for the website, for the social media. And that was just something that I had done as a hobby and that my manager was really open-minded to. So no matter what position you're in, if you're in your dream job even, but you just think your day-to-day is not really fulfilling your passions, you can always put your hand up and try to create that space for yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. Some really, that's a really great advice. And some folks I've heard that sort of approach be called intrapreneurship, sort of staying within a role and then kind of crafting it to fit interests and so on. That's excellent advice. Thank you for sharing what your mentor shared with you. What advice would you give, Marc?
So thinking back, if I did it all over again, I think probably what I would have told myself is spend a bit less time like daydreaming about it or reading about different jobs or industries online. And I probably would have started like networking and talking to people and trying to set up meetings a little bit sooner. So I guess you could probably break that down to, I would have spent less time in like the contemplation phase and a little bit quicker to transition into taking the action.
Okay, awesome. And so that leads us to the next question for you guys. Curious about what unexpected events stand out for you most in your career journey, or are there obstacles that you faced that you overcame?
So this is early on in my career journey. So this is right before I started any of the clinical jobs. It was emotionally a very big roller coaster going into it. So after I made my decision to not go to chiropractic school, my previous partner ended our relationship. And so just going through a lot of the emotional changes, and I think through incidences like that, your self-worth and your self-confidence can take a hit as well. So that was one of the biggest things to overcome initially. And so it took a lot to get over that bump to be able to move forward. And so I'm actually where I am right now, actually is not where I plan to be soon. So I am actually navigating another career change doing right now. So I'm leaning towards one that includes its creativity, visual creativity and science. So I'm actually leaning towards learning UX and UI design. And so overcoming the mental block, it took a long time to get to this point where it was like realizing that I'm not tied to my past. I'm not tied to where I am right now. So I actually had the freedom to choose what I wanted to do. And so looking back and through past jobs, being like, oh, what excited me the most was forming meaningful relationships with people. I had a lot of fun managing the social media accounts and designing graphics for things I did at my church, things I did at work. And I just really want to make things better for people. And so I realized that kind of ties in with UX UI design. I always felt like I had a kind of a creative eye when it came to things. So yeah, just overcoming the obstacle of it's just the whole advice thing, not limiting yourself. So just the biggest obstacle was just overcoming the mentality of you can pursue something new.
That's awesome. Well, all the best with that transition. That sounds like you'll have to join us for our next career transition panel. We'll have to just tweak it a little bit and go from there. That's great. Anything you could add to that, Felicia, about unexpected kind of opportunities or obstacles that have come your way?
Yeah, I have an example for both. I'll be brief, but the unexpected opportunity, I was reminded of it today, actually. But when I was in my first job, when I was saying previously, if your current role isn't really fulfilling your passions, create that space. I was really interested in skincare and beauty, and at the time they were deciding between transitioning fully to Amazon or fully to Sephora. I loved beauty, so of course I wanted to advocate for Sephora. And to do that, my friend who was on the Amazon account had watched me present and educate the team on beauty and said that I should do a lunch and learn. So that was a great opportunity where I created a whole brand for myself. It was called Beauty with Felicia. I hosted a lunch and learn every month, and the boardroom was the biggest boardroom was always filled, like people were standing. It was such a rewarding moment, and it just reminded me that like I may be packing boxes and staying at the office every single day till 10 p.m. crying, but there are moments that I've created for myself that I carry throughout my career, even to this day now at Amazon. And the story came up again, and they want me to do it again here for the marketing team. So things carry with you, and when you least expect it. So that was really great. But obstacles everywhere. And I would say the one obstacle that really shaped how I built my confidence and how I advocated for myself was at my first role. Leadership was not great. I would say that there was a lot of bullying. There was a lot of taking advantage of. Hierarchies was definitely a thing. And I would just say that never rely on your direct manager to be your biggest advocate, because they will do that. And if they do, that's a bonus. But always, if you have any wins, share it with the team, save any good things and bad things, because later down the line, you can work with that. But I would just say everywhere I've been since then, I've always been my biggest cheerleader. Even if it sometimes feels cringe to do it, no one else is going to do it for you. So that was very eye-opening for me.
Good advice. Good advice. I'm seeing definitely a very clear trend on, taking action and not letting things just come to you, but just taking action, trying, and just putting yourself out there.
Yeah, for sure.
And over to you, Marc.
Thanks. So one obstacle, or I guess unexpected event that I didn't really anticipate until I was in the situation was how severe the cold feet would be, like right before you're about to commit to this. So what I mean by that is once I received the offer that I was waiting like a year and a half for, I was so excited, I was so ready, and then the offer sets in and reality sets in. You think, like, is this really what I want? Or was I just kind of pretending or assuming that the grass is going to be greener? And what happens if I hate it? And you almost get to the point of not accepting because you're afraid of this. So the way I overcame it was that I kind of realized that many choices in life can probably be undone, at least to a degree. And then if there is a mistake, I can always go back to doing what I'm doing right now. So it didn't seem like that big of a risk to me once I really thought about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that fear that you're alluding to is, I think, definitely a common theme that we see, like the fear of uncertainty or fear of making like the wrong decision, or what happens if I make the wrong decision. With folks that are kind of asking themselves that question, like what sort of advice comes to mind? And this is really a question for everyone. What do you say to those folks that are kind of stuck in that fear piece?
It's tough. It requires an insane amount of looking into yourself and introspection, actually. I remember saying to you on the phone when we first met, I'm like, I don't know if the problem is my job, or I don't know if the problem is me. And that's the kind of uncertainty over the whole aspect of, okay, well, if I move and I'm just as unhappy, I've gone through all of this and I've gone through training again and I've lost all my other connections. I think the best advice I can give is no one really knows the answer for you. It just requires an insane amount of being honest with yourself and being introspective and thinking, am I doing this for the right reasons, and do I really want it?
Mm-hmm. It's a really good questions to ask.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. I agree with that. I think when even considering what other path to go on, the main thing just kind of reminding yourself was like, you never know until you try it. You can have all these hypothetical situations play out in your head, all these what ifs, but you will truly never know until you're actually in it. Just try to sell yourself short. Don't just go for it. If you have the means to be able to, then
And I would just say, to finish that thought, your path is never linear. It's always ebbing and flowing. I mean, Natalie, you're going into a new transition too. So, but there's always something that you can take away from something in your previous experience. So if that was a failed experience, it's never a failed experience. You're always going to take something away from it. If you did start in retail, you have a great eye for merchandising, you know, so there are a lot of things that may not immediately think is a transferable skill set, but when you're in the role and applying yourself, you'll notice that you bring something different to the table because you've had other experiences that no one else in that table has.
Exactly.
Well said. And so on that note, like when you're thinking about your current role, I guess this question is more about what sort of strategies do you recommend for staying on top of your professional career? Are there I guess I'm curious to hear like what your professional development plans are. Like, how do you maintain your skills for a changing labor market, especially now with lots of changes that happen really quick?
Yes.
Yeah,
Go for it, Felicia. Go for it, Felicia.
Okay. I would say at the start of the pandemic, because I was in PR, I looked left and right, and every agency that I knew, all my coworkers that I had previously worked with had lost their jobs. And at that time I was thinking, seriously, yes, because in PR, the results are never directly related to sales. So if the business needed to cut some budget, PR would have been the first to go because we weren't directly showing our results to sales or anything like that. So in that moment, I thought I needed to transition to marketing. I needed to learn a bit more about the consumer behavior and digital marketing. So I was fortunate that when I was working in my previous company, it was a smaller business, so I can put my hand up and learn. But and so I did work on those different avenues. But I would just say, like, instead of thinking about how you can elevate your current role, always, this is like a mission that I always have, is when I look at someone who is above me or maybe a few positions above me, do they inspire me? Do their day-to-day inspire me? And if that's my linear path, my trajectory to that role, if it doesn't inspire me, we need to pivot. And to pivot, how do I get there? Is talk to the other people who got to where they were. And that's exactly what I did now. And also, to your point, like, you do have to stay in the know. What I do is very close to social media and the fashion industry. So I am very much on TikTok, on Instagram, social media, but have fun with it. Like, if this feels like work for you too, like, you have to address that as well.
Good point.
I pretty much just echo really mostly what Felicia has already said. So in terms of our if you're looking solely into the workplace, every year we do complete a personal appraisal and personal objectives to be submitted to our director and head office. And it happens at the same time every year. So you kind of know, like, throughout the year, it'd be useful to take time to reflect and note down how you want to grow, how you want to improve, and possible opportunities to implement in the workplace. And it's like Felicia said, depending on who your manager is, they can either be your big ally for you, advocate for you, or some may take a more passive approach to your development. So they might be there to kind of listen when you listen to you, but you might need to be the one actively setting up meetings with them to check your progress, actively making opportunities for you to improve in your role and kind of see what else you can add to the workplace, because it may not necessarily be in your printed responsibilities or in your scope, but sometimes you just have to initiate those opportunities and discussions for yourself. And outside of that, you just kind of set schedules for self-learning, like going into this UX. I'm doing an online course for it. So just, if you have this goal, then you just got to be disciplined with time dedicated to it, make a schedule, stick to it, get accountability where it's needed. Because I know it's definitely going to be pretty hard to me, because I'm like going downtown, going for work, coming back out of town, a little tired sometimes. But if this is your goal, just got to be disciplined and stick with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. Just stick with it.
And for me, I think in terms of strategies for development or staying on top of the industry, I think one thing that I've really told myself the past 2 years is just I'm going to constantly be learning, and my superiors have really set that expectation. Like, you're not going to be comfortable for a long time, so just keep learning and keep hacking away at it. And I think I've kind of adopted that now to be even larger scale, even beyond the 2 years. It's like, okay, well, you're a junior in a role, or maybe you're intermediate in a role. There's no reason why you can't continue learning about the industry and learning about your job and your role, which I think is great. Probably the best way I think I go about achieving that is I'll look at the whole year and I'll say, well, what do I want to accomplish by the end of the year? And I'll kind of write some things out that are very vague. And then I'll say, well, in order to do that, like, what do I need to accomplish by the end of the month? And then that kind of gives me at least a little sense of direction as to how to develop professionally and personally.
Mm-hmm. It's great advice. I'm sort of thinking ahead and planning. So thank you for that advice. That's great. And I'd like to take this time at this point to sort of welcome everyone who is in the audience to please feel free to send your questions to the Q&A. I'll be monitoring them here. And as you do that, I'm going to ask our panelists one last question. So our last panel question for tonight is, how would you define career success? And Natalie, we'll start with you, if that's okay.
Yes. So when thinking about this, I believe it's when you find the work you do fulfilling, and no matter what you had to go through, it was worth it to get to where you are. And when you're able to definitively see how you've grown and how you can keep growing, and you're happy, but you're not complacent, and you can see yourself doing this in the foreseeable future, and when it gives you the ability for life and work to have a good balance.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for sharing that.
My definition of success is very similar. It's almost like a combination of what Marc and Natalie have just mentioned. Every time I start a new role, I create sort of like a work back schedule. And if that's a term that not many people understand, it's basically just like a to-do list, a timeline of things that you want to accomplish. So I start towards the end and have these big goals. And this is not a constant list. I'm always evolving this. But I would say, for me to feel successful, I'm always able to look ahead and feel challenged, and that, yes, I feel fulfilled, but there is still an element of learning and challenge and excitement to keep going. If I'm in a role that I feel like I'm about to feel like there's just not much education left for me, then I start looking to see what my other opportunities are, or if I can try to create a different avenue for myself within that company. But I would say, because I'm such a planner, I write it all down and keep a clear head with a specific timeline. And it's not like a, March 1st kind of date, but a Q3 or a certain month. And if you feel like hitting that goal doesn't even excite you anymore, then it's time to reevaluate how you define success too.
Excellent. It's kind of staying flexible. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. And Marc.
Sure. Those were great answers and way better than mine. I think I'm going to be a little bit vague here, but my definition of career success is probably extremely variable person to person. What I mean by that is I really think it depends on the individual, or what makes them happy and what their personal or professional goals are. So for example, like, one person might have the same job and same role for 30 years. And I define that as, in my definition at least, a very successful career if their goal is to find a stable job and stick to it, right? Or another person, they could say, well, I want to be constantly climbing the corporate ladder, and to do that, I have to change companies or change industries or start my own business. And I would define all of those as successful if that's what makes that person feel happy and fulfilled.
Okay. Excellent. Those are all really helpful. And I love how there's so much individuality with that definition of career success. And that is really important, I think, as we develop our professional selves, is to kind of do what we want to do and work hard towards that. So there is a couple questions in the question box here. So we'll start with this one. Did you ever have to overcome negative self-talk or self-doubt during your career journey? If so, how did you overcome that? It's a good question.
Absolutely. I feel like it's not a detriment to your success or to your next step. I think it's very valuable to continue to self-analyze, self-review, self-criticize. Don't be too hard on yourself. We're all still learning no matter what level you're in. But I would say make sure that you create a list of things that you want, like opportunities that you want to try to change, adapt, learn. And then also save everything that you've done that makes you feel proud, because sometimes you do need a reminder of how much you've done to this point. And like I said before, if no one's advocating for you, like that is the time to clap yourself on the back. So it's totally welcomed to self-analyze. It helps you grow and not stay at the same position that you've always been in, but just talk to yourself kindly.
Excellent advice. Anything our other panelists would like to add before we move on to the next question?
Personally, I didn't feel too much negative self-talk, but I felt a lot of self-doubt, if that makes sense. As in, I thought to myself, okay, well, the problem isn't the job, like the problem might be me or something else. But I didn't really feel that I had to overcome self-talk personally. It was just a lot of doubts.
Self-doubt. Okay, thank you for sharing that. Okay, our next question is, what would you recommend? Yeah, what would you recommend when the current industry you work in is more stable, but the one you're thinking about transitioning to is not that stable, and it takes a lot of effort to get into? It's a good question, a bit of a tough one.
I'm applying it to PR specifically, but I guess you could apply this thinking across industries. But if someone had asked me, I'm interested in PR, what should I do? Or is this a stable career? It is not a stable career, not a stable industry, but I would learn why and figure out for yourself by doing the research, where do you think the industry will shift towards in the next 2 years? Because eventually that's where you want to be an expert in. So I would say if it was specifically in PR, what makes it not stable is you should ask questions within people who are in the industry to see what they wish was different about their industry, where they see maybe the shortcomings are. And if the shortcomings align with what you are trying to change about the industry or add value to, that's the time for you to insert yourself and show that you do bring something else to the table to help evolve agency XYZ or brand XYZ to that next level. Maybe you are the one who is going to change the industry for the whole. So have those like analyzing questions wherever you're going, just to like step your toes in to see if it's a stable environment. And if it's not, yeah, try to see how you can change that for yourself.
Yeah, I echo what Felicia was saying there. And I'd also add to it, back to what I was saying earlier about kind of networking and asking people in the industry, is this might be a little bit of your assumption to a degree as to how stable or unstable this next industry is. And what I mean by that is, I don't know what industry this is, but I think reaching out to people who have a job that you might consider you might be interested in, reach out and ask them these questions and say, this is my concern getting into the industry. It seems a little bit unstable compared to where I am now. Do you think that's a valid concern? And how do you overcome the instability? And is this really a problem that is worth not getting into the industry for? And then they might tell you, no, don't worry about it. It's really a non-issue. Or they might say, no, don't do it. And it's information gathering, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And a good reminder to check our assumptions and really ask ourselves, like, how important is it to us? Okay, that leads us to the next question. And I think this question is kind of about maybe keeping yourself kind of current in your role. So the question is, do you go through the process of, in quotes, rehiring yourself into your current roles every so often and searching for what's out there? So I'm thinking it's asking about like kind of checking out what other opportunities are available. And I guess how often do you do that to find out what else is out there?
Yeah, for myself, I'm doing it quite often. So sometimes but for me, it's like when I'm not really sure exactly what role it is I want to go to. For example, I'm interested in UX, but right now with my current qualifications, I cannot move into there. So kind of see what roles are out there that can kind of be a link to be able to transfer in the future. When you're not sure about what role exactly it is you want to do, then you can start by looking on LinkedIn, looking on Indeed, see what's out there and start with companies that you believe in, starting companies that you value. For example, it's like similar to Felicia, it's like I had applied for a role at Pinterest because I'm on it like every day, just looking for inspiration. I applied recently for a role at Disney because I love Disney. So it's like or my friends like go to Exploring Life or Lululemon, anything that like you possibly interact with all the time and you personally value, and that's something that you can start with. And that's kind of how the approach I've been taking, because I don't necessarily have a definitive role that I think I fit right now. So can start there and then look through, see what openings there are, look at their job descriptions, see what you kind of align with, kind of what you don't. And yeah, it's kind of like Marc, right? When you're looking at your previous jobs, see what you take off, and then also be kind of creative in terms of how you think you can transfer what your existing skill set is.
I'm also I mean, have an inner circle that you trust, but I'm also very curious. And if I know a friend is applying to Shopify or Snapchat or anything that's a world that I've never touched in, I always ask them what their interview questions were like. I don't necessarily push for what their answers are because that's, truly what they've experienced. But I am always curious about what are other companies asking, because when I approached Amazon, I did not expect the questions to be the way that they were. And I was also very surprised that there is so many resources out there, especially for the tech industry, but so many resources out there that show the example questions. So if you're in your role and you're wondering if you want to leave or go into a different industry, or maybe in your industry, what sets you aside from other competitions, I think Glassdoor has like a tab where you can see interview questions that people have gone through and just go through them yourself and kind of self-analyze again with nice words. But yeah, there's resources out there, and don't be shy with your friends. Always ask questions.
Great advice. And I think just Ian's going to be putting in our website link as well. That'll kind of link you to some resources that are out there, including some great interview resource called Big Interview that it is open for alumni. So it has a lot of really good banks of questions to kind of prepare as well. All right. And I know we're right down to the wire, but just Marc, is there anything you'd like to add to that last question about if you go through the process of rehiring yourself?
Nothing significant that I add to it. I would say probably once a year I touch up my resume and just think, okay, well, what have I learned in this year, and what can I apply differently? Because you never know if a new position will come up that you want to apply to, where something could happen and your company could close and then you have to move elsewhere. So I think it's just important to touch base every now and then, but not significantly for me.
Okay. That's great. Well, I think, thank you so much for all the insights that you all shared, Natalie, Felicia, and Marc. I thoroughly enjoyed hearing your stories, and in some of the comments that came through, people are finding this really insightful and helpful to their personal situations and career transition. So I have no doubt this panel will be watched moving forward many times. And a lot of career transitions will be made in part based on your stories and your advice that you were able to give. The one thing that really stands out for me is with all of you is really encouraging people to be true to themselves and reflect what they want and take action to get it, whether that's trying to stand out with an interesting application, or taking a risk and talking to people on LinkedIn and trying to make connections. I mean, it's all such great career development strategy. So thank you so much for putting a flashlight on it tonight.
Thank you.
So on that note, oh, my apologies. Sorry. Yeah, go ahead, Felicia.
Oh, I was just saying thank you for having us.
Oh, our pleasure.
Thanks so much, Jillian and Ian and everyone else at Career Success. This is great.
Yeah, we really appreciate your time, and we know all of our attendees do as well. So thank you for giving back to Mac and sharing your stories, because it often is a bit of a muddy path. Career is not linear. I think that was a term that Felicia used, I believe, at a point in our thing, and that's certainly the way it is. So hopefully this chat will offer some confidence in folks moving forward in their own nonlinear career trajectories. So thank you. So on that note, have a great night, everyone, and we hope to see you at our next Career Month event, which is on Thursday, and that's about building career confidence and building a resilient mindset. And that's on Thursday, and that information is on the website that Ian shared. So thank you so much on behalf of Alumni Career Services for joining us tonight, and enjoy the rest of your evening.